Get your incompetent black ass off my carrier now! Admiral Jenkins roars, shoving Lieutenant Commander Tasha Wilson so hard she slams against the railing. Blood trickles from Wilson's lip. The deck falls silent. Sailors freeze, eyes wide, nobody daring to intervene. Jenkins rips the access badge from her uniform, throwing it to the ground. His boot crushes it deliberately as he leans in, breath hot on her face. "Diversity hires endanger lives," he spits, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This isn't your social justice playground." Wilson stands tall, unflinching. Her eyes lock with his, not a hint of submission. The Admiral smirks at her silence, mistaking it for defeat. In 24 hours, her hidden code will be the only thing standing between life and death. 3 days earlier, Lieutenant Commander Tasha Wilson steps onto the USS Vigilance, her new assignment. The massive aircraft carrier gleams in the morning sun as she walks up the gangway, service record impeccable. MIT graduate, top of her class at Naval Academy, creator of next-generation missile defense algorithms. Admiral Jenkins watches from the bridge, jaw tight. "That's our new missile systems specialist?" "Yes, sir. Lieutenant Commander Wilson has the highest credentials in the fleet," his XO replies. "Credentials on paper," Jenkins mutters. "We'll see about real-world performance." Wilson reports for duty, standing at perfect attention. Jenkins barely glances at her extended hand. "We run a tight ship, Commander. No room for errors or special treatment." "None expected, sir," Wilson responds, voice steady. Later, in the officers' mess, Wilson notices conversations stop when she approaches. She sits alone, feeling eyes on her back. A junior officer finally joins her. "Don't take it personally," he whispers. The Admiral has traditional views about who belongs in combat roles. Wilson nods. "I've faced that before. My work speaks for itself." In his quarters, Jenkins reviews Wilson's file again. MIT thesis on autonomous defense systems. Pentagon commendations. Classified projects she'd created that he doesn't have clearance to know about. "Find me something," he tells Commander Brooks, his loyal second. "Everyone has weaknesses. Diversity hires especially." "Sir, her record is spotless," Brooks hesitates. "Then we'll create some spots," Jenkins smiles coldly. "Keep her out of the critical briefings. Assign her to inventory. Let's see how long before she cracks." Wilson unpacks in her quarters, placing a small photo of her family on the desk. Her phone buzzes, a text from Admiral Michaels, her mentor. "Remember, they're testing more than your technical skills." She takes a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. She's faced bias before. This is just another test. Tomorrow's missile defense drill will give Jenkins his first chance to prove she doesn't belong. The carrier's alarm blares at 0500. Wilson springs from her bunk, fully dressed in seconds. Emergency drill or real threat. She's ready. She sprints to the command center, arriving third after the Admiral and his XO. Jenkins glances at her, frowning. "Commander Wilson, you weren't summoned." "All missile defense personnel report during defense drills, sir. Standard protocol." Wilson stands her ground, regulation manual clear in her mind. Jenkins steps between her and the control station. "We handle things differently on my carrier. Observer status only for you today." The command center fills with officers avoiding her gaze. Wilson watches from the back as they run the drill. A simulated missile barrage approaches the carrier group. Response times lag. Intercept patterns follow textbook formations. Predictable, exploitable. "Sir," Wilson steps forward, spotting a critical flaw. "The intercept pattern creates a blind spot in our southeastern quadrant." Jenkins turns, eyes cold. "Did I ask for your assessment, Commander?" "No, sir, but the blind spot. Theoretical knowledge doesn't translate to combat reality." Jenkins cuts her off. 15 years commanding this carrier group trumps whatever they taught you at M1T. The simulation continues. Wilson watches silently as 3 simulated missiles slip through exactly where she predicted. The exercise ends with a failed defense. Recalibrate and run it again, Jenkins orders, ignoring the obvious error. Wilson approaches the tactical officer quietly. If you adjust the intercept vectors by 12 degrees, you'll cover the gap. The young officer glances nervously at Jenkins, then makes a subtle adjustment. The next simulation shows improved results. Jenkins notices. Who altered the defense parameters? Silence falls. The tactical officer stares at his screen. I asked who changed our established protocols? Jenkins demands. I did, sir. Wilson steps forward. The adjustment closed a vulnerability that was allowing penetration in Sector 4. Jenkins' face darkens. You're overstepping, Commander. Stay in your lane. When I want MIT theories, I'll ask for them. The tactical officer catches Wilson's eye with a silent thank you when Jenkins turns away. Wilson's terminal screen flashes with an encrypted message. Defense parameters logged, continuing to monitor situation. Pentagon officials arrive on the USS Vigilance the following morning. 5 high-ranking officers and 2 civilian defense contractors stride onto the command deck where Jenkins welcomes them with practiced charm. We're particularly interested in the new missile defense implementations, says Rear Admiral Porter, the lead visitor. I understand Lieutenant Commander Wilson has brought some cutting-edge protocols aboard. Jenkins's smile tightens. Indeed. Speaking of which, he scans the room, finding Wilson monitoring systems in the corner. Commander Wilson, join us. Wilson approaches, standing at attention. Perfect timing, Jenkins announces loudly. Commander Wilson can demonstrate her expertise. A live fire scenario, I think. He brings up a complex simulation on the main screen. 30 incoming targets, multiple decoys, and electronic countermeasures jamming radar. Commander, show our guests how you'd handle this threat pattern. You have 2 minutes. Wilson recognizes the setup immediately. It's an impossible scenario without access to the classified override protocols. Not a test of skill, but a public trap. She steps to the console anyway. Sir, this scenario requires Phoenix authorization codes to access the countermeasure subroutines. Excuses already, Commander? Jenkins raises an eyebrow. I thought MIT graduates were problem solvers. The Pentagon officials shift uncomfortably. Wilson feels her cheeks burn but keeps her expression neutral. She begins typing rapidly, creating a workaround that might at least demonstrate partial defensive capabilities. Her fingers fly across the keyboard, code appearing on screen. A new approach takes shape, unorthodox but potentially effective. Halfway through, Jenkins steps forward. Allow me to help our struggling officer. He nudges her aside, continuing her work but making subtle changes. The simulation runs. 28 of 30 threats neutralized. That's how it's done, Jenkins announces. Sometimes, theoretical knowledge needs a commander's experience to become practical. The officials nod approvingly. Wilson stands rigid, watching him take credit for her solution and her workaround. Commander Wilson, Jenkins says, not looking at her. Perhaps you could make yourself useful and see if our guests would like refreshments while we discuss actual combat strategies. A civilian contractor, Dr. Harris from Northrop Grumman, watches Wilson carefully. While others congratulate Jenkins, she notices Harris photographing Wilson's original calculations on the discarded notepad. Coffee would be excellent, Commander, Harris says kindly, making deliberate eye contact. And perhaps you could tell me later about your thesis on adaptive response algorithms. I found it illuminating. Wilson fetches coffee while Jenkins leads the group through more simulations, each building on her stolen work. She serves them silently, a decorated officer reduced to waitstaff. As she places a cup before Dr. Harris, the contractor slips her a card. My direct line, she whispers. That was brilliant code you started. We should talk. Wilson pockets the card, face impassive. Jenkins continues his presentation, never acknowledging her contribution. Behind her perfect military composure, Wilson makes a silent promise. This will not stand. The door to Wilson's quarters closes with a soft click. Only then does her military bearing falter. She sinks onto her bunk, hands trembling with suppressed rage. One tear escapes, quickly wiped away. Wilson pulls out her tablet, creating a secure document. She types methodically, recording today's events in clinical detail. Time, location, witnesses, exact quotes. She adds it to a growing file, Jenkins's pattern of behavior meticulously documented. Her phone buzzes. Dr. Harris's text reads, "Impressive workaround today. Jenkins had no idea what you were building." Wilson hesitates, then initiates a secure video call to retired Admiral Michaels, her longtime mentor. "It's worse than I expected," Wilson says when Michaels's face appears. "Jenkins is deliberately sabotaging me. Today he set me up to fail in front of Pentagon officials." Michaels listens, her gray hair pulled back tightly, eyes sharp. "Document everything. Forward copies to secure storage off-ship." "I am." "But he's endangering the carrier with his ego. He modified my defense protocols without understanding the underlying architecture." "That's exactly why you're there," Michaels says carefully. "Keep your head down. Remember the mission parameters." Wilson nods, understanding the subtext. "How long before—" "Soon." "You're not alone in this, Tasha. More eyes are watching than you know." The call ends. Wilson stares at the blank screen, resolving that Jenkins will not break her. Too much depends on her presence on this ship. Meanwhile, Jenkins sits with Commander Brooks in his private office. "Find me grounds for transfer," Jenkins orders. "Performance issues, insubordination, anything." Brooks shifts uncomfortably. "Sir, she's actually performing exceptionally despite the obstacles. The tactical officers are already incorporating her suggestions when you're not looking." Jenkins slams his hand on the desk. "She's disrupting chain of command. My officers follow my protocols, not some theoretical garbage from a diversity hire." "Yes, sir." Brooks hesitates. "There's something else. I tried accessing her complete service record. Parts are classified beyond our clearance." Jenkins frowns. "What parts?" "Her work before the Vigilance. Something called Project Aegis. Even the name is mostly redacted." Back in her quarters, Wilson receives an encrypted message on her secure tablet. "Eyes on Vigilance. Continue mission. Documentation received. Authorization. Phoenix remains dormant until necessary." Wilson's breath catches. Phoenix authorization, the highest defense override codes in the Navy, mentioned in her confrontation with Jenkins earlier. Someone very high up is monitoring the situation. She opens her laptop, submitting her latest missile defense code update through the secure channel. Moments later, confirmation appears. "Update verified. Flagged for Pentagon review. Maintain cover." Wilson closes the laptop, resolve hardening. She didn't just write defense code. She architected the entire next-generation system. A system Jenkins is now compromising with his ignorant modifications. While Wilson prepares for bed, Jenkins accesses her security clearance file and clicks Downgrade. Morning briefing. Officers gather around the tactical table as intelligence reports come in. Satellite imagery shows unusual movement from a potentially hostile fleet near contested waters. Wilson arrives precisely on time, but Jenkins blocks her path. "Classified briefing, Commander. Your clearance level is insufficient." Wilson maintains her composure. "Sir, I checked the roster. This briefing is set at Alpha 7 clearance. My level is Alpha 9. "Was Alpha 9, Jenkins corrects, smiling thinly. "Personnel under performance review receive automatic security downgrades. Standard procedure. Officers avert their eyes as Wilson processes this information. Her clearance downgraded without notification or cause. I've received no performance review notification, sir. It's in process. Now, if you'll excuse us." Jenkins dismisses her with a wave. Wilson exits, back straight, feeling stares on her retreating form. In the corridor, she pulls up her personnel file on her tablet. Multiple performance flags appear, all filed by Jenkins in the past 48 hours. Fabricated incidents, exaggerated errors, twisted versions of their interactions. Meanwhile, in the briefing room, Jenkins outlines the developing situation. Intelligence suggests possible missile tests in our observation zone, nothing our standard protocols can't handle. The tactical officer clears his throat nervously. Sir, the satellite readings show anomalies in their radar signatures. Standard protocols might not... Are you questioning my assessment, Lieutenant? Jenkins cuts him off. No, sir. 2 hours later, Ensign Parker finds Wilson in the mess hall. Commander, I thought you should see this. He slides a data chip across the table. From the briefing, Wilson raises an eyebrow. That's classified material, Ensign. Yes, ma'am. But the anomalies they're seeing, they match exactly what your paper predicted in the MIT journal last year. The Admiral dismissed it, but... Wilson reviews the data, alarm growing. The radar signatures show precisely the pattern she'd identified as the precursor to a new type of stealth missile deployment. Her tablet pings with an encrypted message. Jenkins modified your defense code implementation. Vulnerability created. Possible intel breach. Wilson's blood runs cold. If the hostile force knows about the vulnerability Jenkins accidentally created by modifying her code. The radar screens in Wilson's quarters begin showing anomalies that match her worst-case scenario predictions. Lieutenant Commander Wilson, report to Hangar Deck B for inventory duty. The order comes through Wilson's comm unit as she analyzes the radar anomalies. Critical defense readiness exercises are scheduled to begin in 30 minutes, yet she's being assigned to count spare parts. Wilson reports as ordered. Commander Brooks hands her a tablet. Full inventory verification. Admiral's orders. Sir, with respect, the defense readiness exercise... Are you refusing an order, Commander? Brooks interrupts, though his eyes show discomfort. Wilson takes the tablet. No, sir. She attacks the inventory with ruthless efficiency, counting and cataloging faster than humanly possible. What should take hours, she completes in 45 minutes. Meanwhile, on the command deck, the defense exercise begins. Jenkins watches officers scramble to implement his modified protocols as simulated enemy missiles approach. Intercept failing in sectors 3 and 7, the tactical officer reports. Recalibrate the response vectors, Jenkins orders. Sir, the system won't accept the commands. It's rejecting the override codes. Jenkins slams his fist on the console. That's impossible. Use the secondary protocols. Chaos erupts as the exercise spirals into failure. Simulated missiles breach their defenses from multiple vectors. Wilson returns to the command deck as the exercise concludes. Officers look defeated, terminals showing massive casualties had this been real. What happened? She asks a junior officer. Complete system failure. The defense algorithms rejected manual overrides. Jenkins spots her. Wilson! Did you sabotage this exercise? The accusation rings across the deck. All eyes turn to her. No, sir. I was conducting inventory as ordered. Then explain why the exact portions of code you worked on failed spectacularly. I'd need to see the system logs, sir. Convenient excuse. You're confined to quarters pending investigation. In her quarters, Wilson receives another encrypted message. Jenkins modified your authentication protocols, created backdoor vulnerability. Hostile forces have obtained access, not drill. Actual threat imminent. Attached files show evidence that the same hostile fleet monitored by intelligence has somehow accessed the carrier's defense vulnerabilities, the exact ones created when Jenkins modified her code. Wilson attempts to warn the command deck but finds her communications restricted. She accesses a hidden terminal in her quarters, bypassing the lockdown to view real-time fleet movements. What she sees confirms her worst fears. The hostile vessels are positioning exactly where the carrier's defenses are now weakest. Wilson must choose between following orders and potentially watching thousands die. Red alert klaxons blare throughout the USS Vigilance. Wilson's door remains locked from the outside, confined to quarters while actual danger approaches. On the command deck, chaos reigns. Hostile vessels confirmed. Missile launch signatures detected, the radar officer announces, voice tight with tension. Battle stations. All hands, Jenkins orders. Initiate defense protocols Alpha 3. Sir, that protocol won't work against these signatures, the tactical officer warns. Implement the protocol, Jenkins barks. Wilson hears the alert and makes her decision. Using maintenance codes memorized during her system design, she overrides her door lock and moves swiftly through the corridors. The mysterious ally messages again. Phoenix authorization standing by. Reach auxiliary command terminal. Wilson encounters 2 guards outside the command deck. Commander, you're restricted to quarters, one states firmly. The carrier is under actual attack. The defense systems are compromised. I have the solution, Wilson explains urgently. Orders are orders, ma'am. The deck shudders. A warning shot from the hostile vessels. Wilson calculates she has minutes before actual missiles strike. Inside the command center, screens show incoming threats multiplying. Why aren't the interceptors responding? Jenkins demands, as officers frantically type commands. System rejecting authentication, sir. The door slides open. Wilson enters despite the guards' protests. Admiral, the system needs... Jenkins whirls, face contorted with rage. How dare you disobey direct orders? He strides toward her, physically blocking her from the terminals. Sir, those vessels know exactly where our vulnerabilities are because of your modifications to my code. I can fix it if... Enough! Jenkins shoves her backward toward the door. Security! Remove this officer from my command deck! The crew watches in shocked silence as Jenkins physically pushes her. This is what happens when we prioritize diversity over competence, he announces to the room. A diversity experiment gone wrong. He shoves her again, harder. Wilson stumbles back against the bulkhead. Get your incompetent black ass off my carrier now! Jenkins roars, loud enough for everyone to hear. Wilson stands tall despite the assault. Sir, people will die. Security, escort Commander Wilson to the brig. Insubordination during battle. As guards approach, Wilson's tablet lights up with a final message. Phoenix authorized. Proceed to secondary command. Wilson has one chance to save the carrier, if she can reach the secondary command terminal in time. Wilson allows herself to be escorted from the command deck, mind racing. The guards flank her, moving down the corridor toward the brig. Hostile missile launch confirmed. The announcement echoes through the ship's comm system. Impact in 3 minutes. Officers, Wilson addresses her escorts calmly. You have 2 choices. Take me to the brig and likely die when those missiles hit, or escort me to secondary command where I can save this ship. The guards exchange glances. That's treason, Commander, one says, but his voice wavers. No, it's salvation. I designed the system Jenkins broke. A moment of hesitation, then, Secondary command is this way, ma'am. They reverse course, moving rapidly through the carrier's maze of corridors. Alarms blare. Crew members rush to battle stations. The ship tilts as evasive maneuvers begin. Meanwhile, on the main command deck, Jenkins watches in growing horror as the defense systems fail completely. Nothing's responding, the tactical officer shouts. Intercept missiles won't launch. Override the system, Jenkins orders. We've tried every authorization code. A new voice speaks from the main communication screen. An older woman in full admiral's uniform appears. Admiral Michaels, Wilson's mentor. USS Vigilance, this is Fleet Command. Where is Lieutenant Commander Wilson? Jenkins stares in confusion. She's been confined for insubordination. What does that have to do with... You fool! Michaels cuts him off. Wilson is the original architect of the Aegis Next-Gen missile defense system. She was placed on your ship to evaluate real-world implementation and command culture. The color drains from Jenkins' face. What? She's not just any coder. She designed the entire system you're failing to operate. Her assignment was classified at the highest levels. In secondary command, Wilson slides into the operator's chair. Her escorts stand back, watching as she initiates a complex series of commands. Activating Phoenix Protocol, she states for the record. The terminal scans her retina, fingerprints, and voice pattern simultaneously. Phoenix Protocol engaged. Welcome, Architect Wilson, the system responds. Wilson's fingers fly across the keyboard, entering code sequences from memory. On screens throughout the ship, defense systems suddenly reboot. New interfaces appear, advanced versions officers have never seen before. What's happening? One guard asks. The real system is waking up, Wilson explains, still typing. What you've been using is a limited testing version. The full system required final verification before deployment. Back on the main deck, officers watch in astonishment as their terminals transform. New capabilities appear. Systems they didn't know existed come online. Missile launch detected from hostile vessels, the radar officer reports. 36 incoming, multiple vectors. Jenkins stands helpless. Our defenses are offline. Suddenly, the tactical display shows new intercept patterns forming, elegant, adaptive geometries, nothing like the rigid formations Jenkins had insisted upon. Sir, defense systems responding. But I'm not controlling this. In secondary command, Wilson completes the activation sequence. System fully autonomous now. My original code is responding to the threat pattern. On tactical displays throughout the ship, crew members watch in awe as interceptor missiles launch without manual commands. The defensive screen adapts in real time, creating impenetrable layers of protection. Incoming hostile missiles detonate harmlessly, intercepted with precision that seems almost impossible. Secondary command to bridge, Wilson's voice comes through the comm system. Threat neutralized. Defense systems operating at full capacity. The main screen still shows Admiral Michaels, who now smiles grimly. Admiral Jenkins, you've been commanding a ship running the most advanced missile defense system ever created, and you just physically assaulted its creator. Jenkins stands speechless as his crew stares at him. Lieutenant Commander Wilson isn't a diversity hire, Michaels continues. She's the head of Project Aegis, personally selected by the Chief of Naval Operations to evaluate both the technology implementation and command culture aboard the Vigilance. Wilson returns to the main command deck, escorted by her now respectful guards. The crew parts to let her pass, expressions a mixture of awe and shame for their silence during her mistreatment. She takes her position at the main tactical terminal. Full system diagnostic underway. No damage to core architecture despite unauthorized modifications. Jenkins finds his voice at last. You were spying on my command? Testing me? No, Admiral, Wilson replies without looking up from her work. I was evaluating whether the carrier environment could support next-generation defense implementations. The test wasn't about you, until you made it about me. Admiral Michaels speaks from the screen. Admiral Jenkins, you are hereby relieved of command pending full investigation. Commander Brooks will assume temporary command until further notice. The command deck falls silent as the implications sink in. The woman Jenkins had humiliated, degraded, and assaulted was not just any officer. She was among the most valuable military assets in the fleet. As Jenkins' insignia is removed, satellite feeds show the hostile vessels retreating. But this battle is far from over. Within hours of the incident, the USS Vigilance transforms from combat vessel to center of a rapidly expanding investigation. Military legal officers arrive via helicopter, stern-faced and carrying secure briefcases. They commandeer the Admiral's ready room, converting it into a temporary deposition center. Wilson sits calmly at the tactical station, now officially recognized as the senior Pentagon authority on the missile defense systems. Crew members who had ignored or enabled her mistreatment now approach with technical questions. which she answers professionally without hint of resentment. "Lieutenant Commander," a junior officer approaches hesitantly. "I witnessed the Admiral's behavior but said nothing." "I'm sorry." Wilson nods. "Fear of retaliation silences many. That's part of what we're here to fix." Admiral Michaels arrives personally, striding onto the command deck with a team of technical specialists and legal officers. She embraces Wilson briefly. "You maintained your cover admirably," Michaels says, "though the test conditions became more extreme than anticipated." "The mission parameters were clear," Wilson responds. "Evaluate system implementation and command culture under realistic conditions." Michaels turns to address the assembled crew. "For those unaware, Lieutenant Commander Wilson is not simply an officer with coding expertise. She is the chief architect of Project Aegis, the next-generation autonomous defense system that just saved your lives." Murmurs spread across the command deck. Her placement aboard the Vigilance was classified at the highest levels. Only the Chief of Naval Operations and select Pentagon officials knew her true identity and mission. In the makeshift legal office, Jenkins sits rigidly across from two JAG officers and a civilian Pentagon representative. "This is absurd," Jenkins insists. "I was testing her capabilities." Command pressure is standard procedure for new officers. The female JAG officer slides a tablet toward him. "This contains documentation of 47 separate incidents of discriminatory behavior in just 3 days. Physical assault, verbal abuse, deliberate sabotage of a Pentagon assets mission. I was maintaining discipline." You referred to Lieutenant Commander Wilson as, and I quote, "a diversity experiment gone wrong while physically assaulting her," the male JAG officer interrupts. "This occurred during active combat operations while she attempted to prevent a catastrophic system failure you created. The system was responding erratically because you modified her code without understanding it," the Pentagon representative interjects. "Creating vulnerabilities our adversaries somehow discovered. That aspect is under separate counterintelligence investigation." On the command deck, Wilson leads a comprehensive system diagnostic with her team of specialists. "The Admiral made these changes to the authentication protocols," she explains, highlighting code sections on the main screen. "He removed safeguards, creating a backdoor vulnerability." "Could it have been accidental?" Michaels asks. "Possibly. But these specific changes directly targeted the sections I personally designed. The probability of accidentally creating this exact vulnerability is astronomically low." In another part of the ship, other victims of Jenkins' discrimination begin coming forward. Lieutenant Ramirez, a Hispanic communications officer, describes being passed over for promotion 3 times despite exemplary evaluations. "The Admiral told me my accent would confuse people during combat situations, though I was born in Nebraska." Ensign Washington, a black tactical officer, reveals being assigned to menial tasks whenever visiting dignitaries toured the ship. "He said I didn't present the right image of a naval officer." The stories accumulate, revealing a pattern stretching back years. Officers who had remained silent out of fear now speak freely, their testimonies recorded and added to the mounting case against Jenkins. Meanwhile, Navy investigators discover something disturbing in Jenkins' private communications. "Admiral," a counterintelligence officer addresses Michaels privately. "We found encrypted communications between Jenkins and unknown external parties. He was sending regular updates about the carrier's defense capabilities." "Intentionally?" Michaels asks, alarmed. "Unclear. He may have been manipulated by someone who recognized his prejudices as an exploitable weakness. The timing of his code modifications correlates with these communications." The investigation expands beyond the Vigilance. Records from Jenkins's previous commands reveal similar patterns of discriminatory behavior and questionable decision-making. Officers whose careers stalled under his command are contacted. Many report experiences mirroring Wilson's, Dr. Harris, the civilian contractor who had secretly supported Wilson, provides critical evidence. I documented Admiral Jenkins taking credit for Lieutenant Commander Wilson's work during the Pentagon demonstration, she testifies, providing photos of Wilson's original calculations alongside video of Jenkins presenting them as his own. I've worked with the Lieutenant Commander on classified projects before. I recognized her methodology immediately. By evening, news of the incident begins spreading through military channels. The Chief of Naval Operations personally calls Wilson. "You performed exactly as expected, Commander," he says over secure video, "though I regret the extremity of what you endured." "The mission revealed critical vulnerabilities in both our systems and our command structure, sir," Wilson responds. "I consider that valuable intelligence. Your promotion to captain was already approved before this assignment. It will be announced tomorrow." "Thank you, sir. But more important than my promotion is addressing the systemic issues we uncovered." The legal team presents Jenkins with the preliminary findings. The list of charges is extensive: dereliction of duty, conduct unbecoming an officer, assault, creating a hostile work environment, compromising national security assets, and potential unauthorized disclosure of classified information. "This is a witch hunt," Jenkins protests. "You're destroying my career because I don't subscribe to your woke agenda." "No, Admiral," the female JAG officer replies coldly. "Your career is over because you physically assaulted a superior officer." Superior? She's a lieutenant commander. Lieutenant Commander Wilson's actual rank in the Pentagon Special Projects Division is captain, temporarily downgraded for this assignment. Her work carries Omega-level classification, higher than your clearance allows you to know. When you assaulted her, you attacked an officer who outranks you in the chain of command that matters. Jenkins's face pales as the reality of his situation sinks in. On the command deck, Wilson continues leading the system restoration, working tirelessly despite her ordeal. The crew watches her with new eyes, not just respect for her rank, but admiration for her composure under the discrimination she endured. Ensign Parker, the young officer who had secretly shared intelligence with Wilson, approaches her during a brief break. "Commander, I mean Captain, how did you stay so calm when he was treating you that way?" Wilson considers the question carefully. "Because the mission mattered more than my feelings. Lives depended on these systems working correctly. That's always the priority." As midnight approaches, Admiral Michaels receives an urgent communication. The hostile vessels that retreated after the failed missile attack are regrouping. Intelligence suggests they're planning a second, larger assault. "They're testing our response capabilities," Wilson observes, studying the tactical display. "The first attack was a probe to confirm the vulnerability they thought existed in our systems." "And now that we've closed that vulnerability?" Michaels asks. "They'll likely try a different vector, but with the full system now online and properly authenticated, we're prepared." The legal team completes its preliminary report, delivering it to both Michaels and the Chief of Naval Operations. The recommendations are unanimous: immediate relief of command for Jenkins, full investigation of his previous commands, and review of all officers who served as his direct reports for potential complicity. Jenkins sits alone in restricted quarters, his career in ruins. The magnitude of his miscalculation becomes clear as he reviews the evidence against him. Not only had he discriminated against and assaulted a decorated officer, but he had done so to the very person whose work was revolutionizing naval defense systems. Wilson receives an updated intelligence briefing. The hostile force is adjusting formation. They didn't expect their first attack to fail so completely. They thought they had inside information about our vulnerabilities, Michaels notes. They did, Wilson confirms. Until we closed that door and activated protocols they didn't know existed. As dawn breaks, Wilson finally allows herself a moment of rest. In her quarters, she reviews the events that led to this point. The discrimination, the humiliation, the assault, all endured for the mission. Her tablet chimes with a message from Dr. Harris. Just heard the news about your real position. It was an honor to watch you work under such difficult circumstances. The restraint you showed was remarkable. Wilson types a simple reply. Sometimes the best way to change a system is from within. As Wilson finally rests, Jenkins receives his formal charges, unaware that the most damning evidence hasn't even been presented yet. 1 week later, Admiral Jenkins enters the formal military tribunal hearing room in full dress uniform, despite being stripped of command. His attorney, a veteran JAG officer, sits beside him with a resigned expression. Across the room, a panel of 5 flag officers presides. Military prosecutors arrange documents. Captain Wilson sits at a separate table, composed in her newly authorized rank insignia. This tribunal is now in session, announces Admiral Forrester, the senior presiding officer. The charges against Rear Admiral James Jenkins are extensive and serious. The prosecutor rises. The United States Navy presents evidence of systematic discrimination, physical assault of a superior officer, deliberate sabotage of critical defense systems, and potential collusion with hostile forces. Jenkins's attorney attempts to frame the events as misunderstandings. My client's actions, while perhaps lacking in tact, were motivated by legitimate concerns about chain of command and proper protocol. This defense crumbles as the prosecutors methodically present their case. Video footage from the carrier's security system shows Jenkins physically shoving Wilson during the missile crisis. Admiral Jenkins explicitly referenced Captain Wilson's race during this assault, the prosecutor notes, stating, and I quote, "Get your incompetent black ass off my carrier." Former subordinates testify one after another. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez describes being removed from translation duties despite being the only fluent speaker. Admiral Jenkins said my accent would confuse people, though I was born and raised in Nebraska. Ensign Washington recounts being hidden during V-1P tours. The Admiral said I didn't present the right image of a naval officer. Dr. Harris presents her evidence of Jenkins taking credit for Wilson's work. He deliberately presented her innovations as his own after physically removing her from the briefing. Jenkins shifts uncomfortably as the pattern becomes undeniable. His attorney attempts damage control. My client acknowledges communication failures but rejects any accusation of racial bias. Objection, the prosecutor responds. The Admiral's own words, captured on multiple recording devices, explicitly referenced Captain Wilson's race during his assault. Jenkins finally speaks up. The military isn't a social justice playground. Standards are being lowered to accommodate diversity quotas. My actions were about maintaining combat readiness. The room falls silent at this outburst. Admiral Forrester leans forward. Are you suggesting Captain Wilson, the architect of our most advanced defense system, who saved your carrier when you couldn't, was underqualified? Jenkins falters. Times are changing too fast. Traditional command structures are being undermined by political correctness and— That's enough, Forrester interrupts. Your objection is to the changing military culture, not to any performance issues with Captain Wilson. The final blow comes when counterintelligence officers present their findings. Admiral Jenkins made unauthorized modifications to classified defense code, the lead investigator testifies. These modifications created vulnerabilities that were somehow discovered by hostile forces within hours. Our investigation found encrypted communications between the Admiral's personal device and unknown external servers, transmitting information about these modifications. Jenkins pales. I never intentionally— Whether intentional or not, the investigator continues, the Admiral's prejudice made him susceptible to manipulation. Someone identified his bias as an exploitable weakness and used it against him and the United States Navy. Captain Wilson's testimony is delivered with professional detachment. She describes the discrimination factually, without emotion. She explains the technical implications of Jenkins' code modifications with precision. She never once attacks his character or expresses personal resentment. Her composure makes the Admiral's behavior appear even more irrational by contrast. The tribunal deliberates for less than 2 hours. Jenkins stands at attention as Admiral Forrester delivers the verdict. This tribunal finds Admiral James Jenkins guilty on all counts. You are hereby dishonorably discharged from the United States Navy, stripped of rank and pension. Your case is referred to federal prosecutors for potential criminal charges related to the security breaches your actions facilitated. Jenkins' shoulders slump as his insignia is removed. 28 years of service ended in disgrace. As he's escorted out, he passes Wilson. "This is what's wrong with the modern military," he mutters. Wilson meets his gaze calmly. "No, Admiral. What's wrong was a commander who valued his prejudice over the lives of his crew." From the gallery, younger officers watch as Jenkins exits, particularly women and people of color who had served under his command. Their expressions show not celebration, but solemn vindication. As Wilson accepts congratulations from colleagues, she notices several young black women officers watching with tears in their eyes. 3 months after the Jenkins Tribunal, Captain Tasha Wilson stands at a podium in the Pentagon's main briefing room. Behind her, a digital display shows the new Wilson Standards, comprehensive anti-discrimination protocols being implemented across all military branches. These standards aren't just about preventing discrimination, Wilson explains to the assembled military leadership. They're about creating a culture where every service member's contributions are valued based on merit, not undermined by bias. The Chief of Naval Operations nods approvingly from the front row. Beside him sits Admiral Michaels, Wilson's longtime mentor. The Wilson Standards introduce several critical reforms: anonymous reporting channels for discrimination, regular command culture assessments, mandatory bias recognition training for officers, and clear consequences for violations at all ranks. We've already identified 28 command environments requiring immediate intervention, Wilson continues. The Jenkins incident wasn't isolated. It was symptomatic of broader issues we must address. Meanwhile, at Naval Academy and officer candidate school briefings across the country, Jenkins's case study becomes required learning. Instructors use security footage from the USS Vigilance to demonstrate how bias creates not just ethical failures, but critical security vulnerabilities. Admiral Jenkins' prejudice didn't just harm Captain Wilson, an Academy instructor tells cadets. It created an exploitable weakness that hostile forces identified and targeted. Discrimination isn't just wrong, it's a national security liability. At Defense Contractor Headquarters, Dr. Harris leads a boardroom discussion on new diversity initiatives. Captain Wilson's experience demonstrates what we lose when we allow bias to go unchallenged, she tells executives. Her innovations were nearly dismissed because of one commander's prejudice. How many other brilliant minds have we failed to recognize? The defense industry responds with substantial changes: blind review processes for technical innovations, diverse hiring panels, regular culture audits, mentorship programs for underrepresented groups. Back on the USS Vigilance, now under new command, Ensign Parker receives a commendation for moral courage. Your decision to share critical information with Captain Wilson despite pressure to remain silent directly contributed to saving this vessel and its crew, the new captain tells him during a formal ceremony. The young officer's actions inspire a new recognition program throughout the fleet, the Parker Integrity Award, for service members who demonstrate moral courage in challenging situations. In a secure Pentagon office, Wilson meets with other minority service members who share similar experiences. Your stand changed things, Lieutenant Commander Ramirez tells her. People are speaking up now. Commands are listening. It wasn't just me, Wilson responds. It took every person who documented incidents, who provided testimony, who refused to stay silent any longer. The mysterious Pentagon ally who supported Wilson during her ordeal is finally revealed: Captain Eleanor Reynolds, who had served under Jenkins 15 years earlier and experienced similar discrimination that derailed her career. I couldn't stop him then, Reynolds tells Wilson during a private meeting, but I could ensure you had the support I never did. Wilson receives a classified new assignment, leading a task force to evaluate command cultures across the fleet, with authority to recommend immediate leadership changes where bias is detected. This isn't about punishment, Wilson tells her new team. It's about creating military excellence by ensuring every valuable mind is heard. 6 months later, Wilson arrives at another carrier where reports of discrimination have surfaced. But this time, she comes with the full authority of the Pentagon behind her. 1 year after the Jenkins incident, Captain Tasha Wilson stands on the bridge of the USS Constitution, her own command. The carrier group moves with precision through international waters, conducting routine patrols with unprecedented efficiency. Wilson studies the tactical display, watching her officers work seamlessly as a unit. Her command style emphasizes both technical excellence and mutual respect. The results speak for themselves: highest readiness ratings in the fleet, record-breaking crew retention, and innovations that have been implemented across the Navy. In a small civilian apartment across the country, former Admiral Jenkins works as a security consultant for a local business. His military credentials erased, he struggles in obscurity. During lunch breaks, he sometimes watches news reports about the Wilson standards transforming military culture. His expression remains bitter, unchanged by his downfall. Back on the Constitution, Wilson's missile defense system has become standard across the fleet. The autonomous protocols she designed have already prevented 3 potential international incidents by intercepting rogue missiles with perfect precision. Lieutenant Parker, the young officer who helped Wilson during her ordeal on the Vigilance, now serves as her tactical officer. His career has accelerated based on merit and moral courage, qualities Wilson actively fosters in her command. "Captain," Parker reports, "the defense demonstration is ready whenever you are." Wilson nods. "Let's show our guests what this system can do." On the observation deck, military attachés from allied nations watch in amazement as Wilson's missile defense system intercepts 50 simultaneous threats without human intervention. The demonstration cements international adoption of her innovations, creating a more stable global security environment. Later that evening, Wilson mentors a group of junior officers from diverse backgrounds. They gather informally in the officers' mess, asking questions about career advancement and leadership challenges. The hardest lesson, Wilson tells them, is distinguishing between genuine performance feedback and bias. Not every criticism stems from prejudice. Sometimes we simply need to improve. Learning to tell the difference is crucial. A young black woman lieutenant raises her hand. "Ma'am, how did you maintain your composure during the Jenkins situation?" "I would have broken." Wilson considers this carefully. "I focused on the mission, not the obstacle. Jenkins was temporary. The work was permanent." She pauses. "And I documented everything. Never underestimate the power of methodical documentation." The officers nod, absorbing this wisdom. The next morning, Wilson receives the Navy Distinguished Service Medal in a ceremony attended by the highest military leadership. The citation mentions not only her technical innovations, but her moral courage in confronting systemic bias while maintaining perfect professionalism. After the ceremony, Admiral Michaels, her longtime mentor, embraces her. "You've changed things, Tasha. Not just policies, but mindsets." "There's still work to do," Wilson responds. "Always will be," Michaels agrees. "But now there's a path forward." Later that week, Wilson addresses a new class of recruits, diverse faces looking up at her with hope and determination. Some recognize her from news reports about the Jenkins incident. Others know her only as the creator of revolutionary defense systems. "Your value to this service isn't determined by your appearance, background, or conformity to traditions," Wilson tells them. "It's measured by your skills, your integrity, and your commitment to the mission. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." She moves through the ranks, speaking individually with recruits. When she reaches a young black woman who stands at perfect attention, Wilson pauses. "What brings you to the Navy?" she asks. "You did, Captain," the recruit answers. "I was ready to choose another path until I saw what happened on the Vigilance. It showed me that things are changing. Wilson nods, seeing her own journey reflected in the young woman's eyes. True power isn't measured by rank or privilege, Wilson tells her quietly, but by the courage to stand firm when injustice tries to break you. The recruit straightens even taller. I won't break, Captain. I know you won't, Wilson replies. That's exactly why you belong here. If you found value in today's story, help us spread these messages further. Like this video, subscribe to Beat Stories for weekly justice narratives, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Every share extends our reach to someone who might need to hear exactly these words of empowerment.
What happened today isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.